Howdy, maths fans. Multiplying out two brackets is what we're going to be looking at here. So, called expanding brackets, two brackets. So, questions that look something like this. X plus 5, all multiplied by x minus 2. Let's go for it. Now, there's a few different methods for this. I'm going to show you a couple of them, and then I'll stick with one that I prefer. But any of these methods are so closely linked, they all kind of do the same thing. So I'm going to start off with the grid method for multiplying out two brackets. The key thing for any method is to recognize that I have to multiply x and plus 5, both of those things, by x and minus 2. So I'm multiplying four things. I'm doing an x times an x times a minus 2, a 5 times an x, and a 5 times a minus 2. And there's different ways to set this out. So I'll show you the grid method, and then I'll show you something called the parrot's beak method, or FOIL. So here we go with the grid method. So we're going to break this down into x and plus 5. So I've broken that into x and plus 5, and then the other bracket into x and minus 2. And then all I have to do is multiply each of those parts. So I'm going to do x times x, x squared. X times minus 2 is minus 2x. 5 times x is 5x, or plus 5x if you prefer, and 5 times minus 2 is minus 10. Now we're going to add all these pieces together. So I've got x squared minus 2x plus 5x minus 10. And then with any of these, that's the expanding done. What we can do at the end here is just to simplify minus 2x and plus 5x. Well, minus 2x plus 5x, that is plus 3x. So I end up with x squared plus 3x minus 10. Worth recognising there that I can't combine the x squared with this. X squared is not a like term, but the minus 2x and the plus 5x, those are like terms, so I can combine them to get this 3x. So, simple as that. You break it down into x and plus 5, into x and minus 2, and then I multiply all of those parts out, simplify at the end, collecting the like terms. That's the grid method. It is so similar in some ways to this next method, but I think I prefer this next method. It's a little bit quicker, I think, a little bit less writing. Now, this is sometimes called FOIL, which stands for front, inside, oh, no, not inside yet, do an O first, outside, inside, and then last. Some people prefer to remember it this way: front, outside, inside, last. The principle is the same. We're going to take the first term, multiply it by the first term in the other bracket. So x times x. That's the front of this bracket, front of this bracket. Then I'm going to do the two outside numbers, the ones on the outside, x times minus 2. Then I'm going to do the inside, 5 times x, the two numbers on the inside, or the two terms on the inside. Then I'm going to do the last, so the last number in this bracket, and the last term in this bracket, and multiply those. You'll see it's very similar to the grid method in some ways. I'm just multiplying all those parts. And the reason it's called the parrot's beak is, you can see I've drawn here, it looks a bit like a parrot's beak. If you look at the top of a parrot's beak, is sort of longer than the bottom. So x times x, let's do that first. We get x squared. X times minus 2, we get minus 2x. Plus 5 times x is plus 5x. And plus 5 times minus 2 is minus 10. Collect those two like terms in the middle. X squared plus 3x minus 10. So you can see the methods are all very closely linked. Whichever one works for you for remembering to multiply all the parts and then simplify. I like the parrot's beak because I can just very quickly draw it like that, like that. Let's do some more examples with some different things in this. So we've got two positives here. We've got x plus 4x plus 7, x times x squared. X times 7, 7x. 4 times x, or plus 4 times x, is plus 4x. Plus 4 times plus 7 is 28. And once again, collect the two like terms, gives us x squared, 7x and 4x is 11x, and then a plus 28 on the end. So that's with two positives. It's pretty straightforward with two positives. Let's have a look at two negatives now. Front, x times x squared. Outside, x times minus 8 is minus 8x. Inside, minus 3 times x is minus 3x. And then minus 3 times minus 8, a negative times a negative is a positive. And we get plus 24. So just be a bit careful. Negative times negative, easy to make a mistake there. Then when we collect our like terms, minus 8x minus 3x is minus 11x. So we get x squared minus 11x plus 24. So that's when there's two negatives. You end up with a negative term in the middle and a positive constant on the end. Let's move on to when we've got a plus 6 and a minus 6. Let's see what happens with this. Front, x squared. Outside, minus 6x. Inside, plus 6x. And plus 6x times minus 6x. Positive times a negative is a negative. And what happens here is these two middle terms, plus 6x and minus 6x, they cancel each other out. That is 0. So we end up with just x squared minus 36. And this is called the difference of two squares. We've got x plus 6, x minus 6, and we end up with a square term here and a square term here. Won't go into that in too much detail now, but worth noticing that sometimes we'll cancel out that middle term when we've got a plus 6 and a minus 6, or any two numbers, the positive and the negative. One last thing to recognise is we can have different things in here. We could have 2x we can have a coefficient in front of the x. So let's see what happens there. 2x times x, 2x squared. 2x times minus 3 is, minus 6x. Be a bit careful. Plus 4 times x works the same. Plus 4 times minus 3. And then simplify the middle ones. Gives me minus 2x there. So I get 2x squared minus 2x minus 12. Not too different. Just be careful that you are doing, as I made the mistake nearly, the 2x there. All right, that is multiplying out two brackets. Go and give it some practice.